Good morning, our distinguished panelists and our participants that have joined us. I see the number is still growing. My name is Daniela Mbuko, and I'm the CEO of Pharmaceutical Society of Kenya. And I'm very happy to host this morning this Pharmacy COVID-19 dialogue. I think it's the 6th in our series. And it's a series where we talk about how pharmacists are responding to the COVID-19 pandemic at their various workstations. And we feature pharmacists from a wide array of areas of practice. We have featured community pharmacists. We have featured hospital pharmacists. We have featured pharmacists in the policy and regulatory space. And as the series goes on, we shall feature others in manufacturing, in regulatory affairs, in supply chain management. We shall also feature guests, pharmacists from other jurisdictions, other countries. And so you can be sure that every Wednesday morning, we are bringing you an aspect of pharmacy practice with regard to COVID-19 response. So I'd like now to introduce to you our moderators for this morning. And our moderators are Dr. Michael Mungoma, who's a member of PSK. He's also the Dean, School of Pharmacy at Mount Kenya University. And he's a member of the PSK National Executive Committee, which is a committee of the National Governing Council. And he's a member of the PSK COVID-19 Response Task Force. Karibu sana, Dr. Mungoma.
Thank you.
Our second moderator for this webinar is Dr. Sylvia Opanga. She's a member of PSK. She's also a senior lecturer at the School of Pharmacy at University of Nairobi. She's the chair of the Education and Public Health Committee of the COVID-19 Response Task Force. Karibu sana, Dr. Opanga.
Thank you, Dr. Daniela.
Thank you, moderators, for being on this call. And our moderators will take us through the program. Over to you, moderators.
Good morning. I'll take it over from there. So before we start this webinar, we have a few ground rules and announcements. Participants are muted during the entire course of the webinar. Please ask questions via the Q&A tab. Don't use the chat option to ask questions. Use the Q&A tab at the bottom of your window, and questions shall be addressed by panelists later in the program. PSK members, if not already done so, please subscribe on PPD portal for today's webinar so that you can get your CPD points. Please note that CPD points will only be awarded to paid up PSK members. Now, this webinar is being recorded and the audio will be made available on PSK's YouTube page for those who might want to catch up later. So let me go ahead and introduce our speakers. Our first speaker is Dr. Hinjal Bhatia. She's the Deputy Pharmacist in charge at Kilifi County Hospital. She has a Bachelor in Pharmacy from Manipal University in India, and she's a certified diabetes educator from International Diabetes Federation. She also has a certification in anticoagulation management from ICI Eldoret and a certification in global health research from the University of Washington. Welcome, Dr. Hinjal. Our next speaker is Dr. Elizabeth Gadua. Dr. Elizabeth Gadua is a clinical pharmacist and an MTM specialist. She obtained her Bachelor of Pharmacy from the University of Nairobi and a Master's in Clinical Pharmacy from the SEM. She currently works as a clinical pharmacist at Kilifi County Hospital and is a member of the medication therapy management team at the hospital. Karibu, Dr. Elizabeth.
Thank you so much.
Our next speaker is Dr. Bennett Karani. Dr. Karani graduated from the University of Nairobi with a Bachelor of Pharmacy. He is certified in Oncology Pharmacy from the International Cancer Institute and Global Health Research from the University of Washington. He practices at Kilifi County Referral Hospital, where he's a member of the Medicines and Therapeutics Committee and the hospital CME coordinator. Welcome, Dr. Karani.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sylvia.
Okay, so on to the program of the day. We shall start with Dr. Hinjal Bhatia, followed by Dr. Karani, and then we will have Dr. Isabelle Dubois finishing. At 12, we will have the Q&A session. So I'd like to hand it over now to Dr. Hinjal to start. Karibu, Daktari.
Thank you, Dr. Sylvia. Thank you, Dr. Daniela, for your warm welcome. Good morning to all the participants who have made time to listen to the team from Kilifi County Hospital today. Thank you, PSK, for giving Kilifi County Hospital team the opportunity to talk today on this platform. We are very excited to share with you all our part in tackling the virus. My name is Dr. Bhatia, and let's jump right in. As we all know, we are right in the middle of a severe health crisis that has brought the world to a standstill. We're currently living through a pandemic. Coronavirus is a term that is on everyone's minds. Today, I want to talk about how Kilifi County Hospital pharmacists have played a role in taking our profession to another level and demonstrate the uniqueness about being a pharmacist. Firstly, let me talk about Kilifi in general. I know it seems obvious, but there are some people who assume Kilifi is a part of Mombasa, but it's actually not. Kilifi County is the third largest county. However, it's less densely populated than Mombasa. It could be one of the reasons why coronavirus is not as widespread in Kilifi as it is in counties such as Nairobi and Mombasa, which is more densely populated. It's located north of Mombasa, and its major towns include Malindi, Kilifi, Mariakani, Watamu, Kaloleni, and Mazeras. I think we can go on to the next slide, please. Yes. Yes. So Kilifi has 7 sub-counties, out of which 3 of the sub-counties are headed by pharmacists as sub-county medical officers of health. And all 7 sub-counties has an active sub-county pharmacist in charge of all matters pharmaceutical. The area has 3 main hospitals. We have Kilifi County Hospital, Mariakani Sub-County, and Malindi Sub-County Hospital, as well as 2 smaller hospitals. So Kilifi County Hospital currently is the isolation center at our COVID complex, and we have another isolation center at Sajanan's school in Mtwapa, and Jibana also has an isolation center. So each of our pharmacists at the hospital has played a role in responding to the COVID pandemic at the hospital. We have played a number of roles, which are as follows. Next slide, please. So these are our pharmacists at Kilifi. This is Dr. Terry Kamau. She's a pharmacist in charge. Dr. Adan, the CCRC pharmacist. Dr. Bennett Karani, one of our panelists, is the MTM pharmacist, along with myself and Dr. Elizabeth Katua and Dr. Nigel as well. So let me take you to all the roles we've played regarding this. So as you can see on the screen, there's manufacturing of the hand sanitizer, pharmacovigilance, inputs and case management guidelines, commodity management, involvement in WHO solidarity trial, our COVID response team, and other responsibilities. I shall take you through the first one, and my colleague, Dr. Karani and Dr. Elizabeth, will take over. So production of hand sanitizers. The idea for this came about when the first case of COVID hit Kenya, and the demand of hand sanitizers shot up almost immediately, leading to suppliers not having enough stocks. At the hospital, we had a crisis regarding hand sanitizer, and that's when the pharmacy department decided to stand up and say, yes, let's make this. We referred to the WHO guidelines for manufacturing the sanitizers, and we chose to adopt these guidelines for Kilifi County Hospital. Since 3rd of April 2020, we have made about 2,000 bottles of 500 milliliters, which have greatly benefited within the hospital and around the sub-counties of Kilifi North and other government departments in the county. We use a recommended percentage of 99.8% of IPA from WHO to get our final percent of 75 for the sanitizer. Next slide, please. For stability testing, we removed about 750 ml from each batch to check for color change, and also measuring the alcohol content using an alcoholometer as well. There was no color change, and our percentage of alcohol content was maintained throughout our batches. The next slide, please. Next slide, please. The feedback we received from our users has been very positive in terms of no strong odor, easy to use, not sticky, clear solution, and no visible sediments. Just yesterday, I was asked by the CEC secretary if our hand sanitizer was available, as they really liked it and they trusted our concentrations to be accurate. It brought immense pride to my colleagues and I to say we made that from scratch. We are currently in talks with the laboratory department of the hospital to conduct further tests for microbial growth on these sanitizers. Each batch of these sanitizers has been accounted and distributed with appropriate documentation to avoid any sort of misuse or discrepancies. We also communicated and encouraged our colleagues in Malindi and Mariakani to start up production. It was a very positive response from their work. Kudos to their hard work. We did have a few challenges in the making of this. Our first batch, we used methylated spirit as we waited for our supplies of isopropyl alcohol to reach the hospital. We made about 10 bottles using methylated spirit, but the smell was too strong and we were not happy with the results, so we switched to surgical spirit. We also had to measure the alcohol content of the various IPA, as the batch we received had a wide range and they did not indicate how much % each of the batches had. So due to the different percentages of each of these alcohol batches, we had to recalculate the formula each time. Next slide, please. We even had a difficult time obtaining distilled water, as the quantities we needed were not as easily available at the hospital. We even had a challenge obtaining the equipment and chemicals for the production, because we required a 50-liter tank, measuring cylinders, stirrers, hydrogen peroxide, but we did manage to obtain all of this equipment. The hand sanitizer bottles we were using for refilling, we had a challenge with them as they were not returning the sanitizer bottles back, and it's still a continuing challenge. We thought it's a physically demanding task, because the alcohol came in 200-liter barrels and we had to shift them to 20-liter jerrycans, so we could use it to mix it in our final 50-liter drum that we use to manufacture the sanitizers. The next few slides will show you pictures of our labels and our hand sanitizer bottles. If you can move on to the next slide, please. Yes, these are the labels that we had. We had 3 different alcohol concentrations that we used whilst waiting for our isopropyl alcohol to come in. Next slide, please. Yeah, so this is the picture of our bottle of hand sanitizer that we used. We are very proud of this hand sanitizer and the new lens it has created. Thank you, participants, for listening, and my colleague, Dr. Karani, will take you through the next part of the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hinjal, for that presentation, the initial presentation. I just want to remind the participants to post their questions in the Q&A tab that is at the bottom of the screen. Go ahead, next presenter.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for the introductions, and thank you all for taking time to join in on today's Pharmacy COVID-19 dialogue. As Dr. Bhatia had introduced earlier on the roles that we've discussed, the roles that we've played so far, I will continue the discussion and talk about pharmacovigilance. So this is a topic of discussion where we like to talk about it as pharmacists, but we shy off from the work itself because it entails the work of reporting this, intervening, and actually submitting. So the different parts of pharmacovigilance, for us, it's a routine service that we provide at Kilifi County Hospital, where we get this, we intervene, document, and report ADRs on a daily basis. So this variant forms the adverse drug reactions, medication errors, poor quality medicines, which have been on the rise. So within this past few months, we've had a lot of poor quality, which maybe our colleagues at PPB will be able to make sure this comes down because through proper regulation. And also we've taken a part of training the healthcare workers on identifying reporting and submitting. So submitting online or submitting to the MTM clinic where we do the posting to the online forms that are available to the PPP portal. So in the context of COVID, it's nothing much has changed, but they've added a duty now to report and intervene on medical device incidents. So there's medical devices incidents reporting forms that in as much as we have these other areas that we are following up and monitoring and intervening, we also have now the medical devices that we need to pay close attention to that. So this was made possible and easy because of the timely release of the guidelines. These guidelines were released by PPP, guidelines on safety and vigilance of medical products and health technologies. So in these guidelines, we have a section on the medical device incident form. This form, it elaborately tells you what to fill in and what reactions, depending on the type on the device. If it's an implant, if it's a glove, a surgical mask. So we went through the guidelines and found that there's a provision for such a form that we were using for that. So some of the poor quality, so with the influx of masks and everybody getting masks from everywhere, we found that there's some N95 masks you couldn't wear because the straps kept on snapping off. And we had some surgical masks that the airflow was retarded in such a way that there was no airflow. You put on the masks and then you can't breathe in them. So we had a variety of those issues that came up. And then now, as we went on with the monitoring, we found that there are allergic reactions that started coming up. The users of these masks in our facilities started developing allergic reactions to the mask. So this was reported mostly around the mouth area, swelling of the lips, swelling, itching of the lips, the nose, swelling, watery eyes, and then having the blisters, rashes that blister and actually form wounds around the area of application of the mask. So this was mostly noted with the surgical masks coming in as compared to N95 masks. But then with the PPE requirements for the different levels of isolation, different levels of infection prevention, we realized that we had a little of the N95 masks. So we had to intervene in such a way that if you reacted to the face mask, this surgical mask, we had a provision for you to get the N95 and then monitor the progress after that. So some of these cases required just antihistamines, cetirizine, and topical ointments not for the face area, but any other areas that are affected by maybe sanitizers and the hand rubs on the areas of the hand. So most of them required mild medicine intervention, none was severe requiring hospitalization. So for the forms that were filled, a total of 15 so far, more are still coming in. So we are urging the healthcare workers to report all these allergic reactions they have to the masks. Some came in headaches, and we intervene depending on the individual presentation of the patient. So there are some who report they use them for a week where they're in the course of duty. Then when they go home, over the weekend, everything is okay. And then on Monday, when they don again the face mask, surgical mask, it's the same story all the time. So we tried having different batches given, but then that will discuss as a challenge because we noticed that most of these surgical masks coming in, even when you're reporting it, it's written in Chinese. So my colleagues and I, we really don't know much about Chinese language, but I think this would be a recommendation later on to our regulators as we move on. So this, we can go to the next slide because much of it is there. I've elaborated. So yeah, these are the reports we've done and the inputs regarding the sanitizer. So the reporting was both ways, for sanitizers and the face masks, both surgical and N95. Next slide, please. Yeah, so the challenges. These are challenges. The first challenge was the filling of the ADR forms. These guidelines provide for only the yellow forms and the pink forms. This is the online portal for the PPB. The online portal does not provide for adverse reactions to immunization, adverse events following blood transfusion. So these forms are lacking. And one of these forms, also the medical device incident reporting form, is also missing in the online portal. So I had a conversation with the contact of PPB, and they advised for us to report these to the yellow forms online. But then the question was, would it be appropriate? Would it be categorized as face masks reactions, or it will be under drug reaction? So it was not really clear on that part as part of submission on the online platform. So maybe as a recommendation, since we have the forms and the guidelines, we could have it put up in the online portal so that it can be easy to report. We use the right form to report the right problem, that instead of bulking everything to an ADR yellow form, yet we have provisions for the different forms that we can fill in the different reactions. So that was a challenge for us, and we have it even now because we have most of these forms, and we are torn between submitting them online as yellow in the yellow form, or having them just waiting for them to upload the other forms. Then also the other challenge was tracing the batch numbers, because you have the report, then you go back to the box, you want to get the details, then it's Chinese, then you're stuck. So we had to take photos, which you'll see later, that we had to pluck off the insert, whatever we hope that the insert has the batch number and everything, because it's in Chinese. Then we just staple it to the form, and maybe take a photo and submit that in the online platform. I hope that will be enough or sufficient. So as a recommendation, we would need to maybe upload those forms, the appropriate forms for the appropriate reaction that we need to report, and then have a feedback, a way to notice that, to know that we have reported this surgical mask has this problem with this kind of people. So we're not expecting it to be brought back again. Maybe our regulators could highlight more on that maybe later. But so we're moving on to the next slide, please. Those are the photos of some of the forms that we filled, and we're waiting on the information regarding the batch numbers and the model and the type of the mask and what was used, expiry date, manufacturing date. So next slide, please. Yeah, this is what I was talking about, Chinese. Yeah, so we just had to take a photo and report that. Next slide, please. Yeah, there's this. So sometimes it's hard to really fill in the forms when you have information is not consolidated in one place. Next slide, please. Yeah, that shows it. And then next slide, please. Yeah, that's one that we filled in the yellow form and submitted. Next slide, please. Yeah, so moving on to the next role. So we also we took inputs in case we had inputs in case management guidelines. So we had a sitting with a physician, consultant physician, and the MTM team. This was before the national guidelines came in, and we drafted a bit of guidelines on the way forward on how we're going to handle our business in and around the hospitals as members of the Medicines and Therapeutics Committee and as advisors to the hospital board on what to do in case something like this happens. So the recommendations were made. Next slide, please. So some of the recommendations that we gave were for longer refills of medication for chronically ill patients. These are stable patients. In the clinic, we have those high-risk patients, stable patients, and so for the high-risk patients, they need close monitoring. These are the ones who have comorbid illnesses, like you have diabetes, hypertension, and a person living with HIV. So these ones are at higher risk of getting COVID-19 and having a moderate to severe or critical presentation of COVID-19 should they get it. So for those on low risk, we give longer refills, but so that we can make space for these high-risk patients coming in that will need maybe constant following and monitoring of adherence and by their monitoring of sugars and blood pressure readings. So for the high risk way, there was social distancing on the waiting benches and the pharmacy windows, and at all points of care and all points of services in and around the hospital. And again, high risk patients, HIV pregnant mothers, and PMTCT. or EMTCT, depending on the setup, to continue as it had been. And then we also had a list, we compiled a list of medicines that we will stock up in the isolation centers. And this was in reference to the WHO guidelines. There was an essential medicines list for ICU COVID-19 in isolation centers. So when you go back there to that document, it gives you a list of the things that you would put. But you have your muscle relaxants. If it's all from this list of drugs, you compile the list that we'll really need to use depending on the severity, symptomatic, asymptomatic, mild, severe, critical. And then now, of course, with that comes in stockouts of drugs as a challenge, because when you're giving 3-month refills and normally clinics get 2 months or a month refill, then your drugs tend to run out, because those who deal with commodity management and orders know that you do your consumption based on your monthly consumptions, and then you can extrapolate that to get your refills and do that. So if you're giving, all of a sudden you're giving 3 months supplies, then you find that you're running out of stock. That's exactly what happened. So we had a period where we had to do emergency orders and have orders coming into the hospital impressed, and that's a bit of a challenge. It's also a challenge still now, but we've been getting some drugs coming in, so that should be okay. Next slide, please. Yeah, so there's commodity management. So KCH is a central site for drug supply and personal protective equipment distribution to the isolation centers. So this deals with the drug supplies to these centers. Then one of the criteria is you need to have long expiry drugs going to these centers, because you're not going to all of a sudden decide your dexamethasone is short expiry. You need to bring it back to the pharmacy that you can push it to go faster so it doesn't expire. So one of the criteria was to choose the drugs that are going to these isolation facilities are identified on need basis and are long expiry, so that we don't have to recall some of them because we run out of stocks. So this, for us working in government facilities, stockouts, we don't have drugs most of the time. Most of you can bear with us. So you have to really reorder and bring back drugs from facilities and everything. So for these isolation centers, you realize you cannot do that. You just have to give them the drugs that go there, they go there, you cannot bring them back. So stockouts was there. And our key players in this one, Dr. Terry, our pharmacist in charge, and Dr. Cecilia, our county pharmacist. These people played a key role in constant supply and accountability of the PPEs, because they had to now come in, inspect, and receive, confirm quality, and then assess. The challenge again was this Chinese, so that was another problem. Maybe when input, I know it's a crisis and situation where there's a global pandemic, but then the rules should apply whether we have COVID-19 or not. So maybe our regulators can maybe be steadfast on this so that we don't get things we cannot treat, that we cannot inspect. And most of these PPEs come in as a full gown, from the boots all the way up to the eye protectors and the hair covers. So maybe that would be a recommendation moving forward from this. And as we learn from this pandemic, because it's new and everyone, that's why we're sharing this dialogue, so that we can be able to find a way forward and make things work better than we've been doing in the past. So they receive and confirm, record quantities of the PPEs and the drugs. Yeah, this, as we said, is a central site. So we distribute to the sub-county facilities and the isolation centers. Next slide, please. Yeah, so these are the criteria that we use when we are stocking those facilities on need to be long expiry and on need basis. And then, thank you. That's it for my part. For the next part, we'll continue to discuss. Dr. Elizabeth Dubois will take us. I will proceed with the other roles that we have set for today's dialogue. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you for your attention. Expecting your questions in the question and answer section. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Karani, for running us through those slides. I think it's quite informative. I think there's quite a lot going on in Kilifi. So, Dr. Dubois, please take us through the final slides.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Karani, and thank you to our moderators and the CEO for this opportunity. So I'll just take us through the remainder of the presentation, and I'll just start with the role that our public health pharmacists played in responding to COVID. So Kilifi County Hospital houses the Kilifi North Sub-County Health Management Team and the Kilifi County Health Management Team. So we work closely with the pharmacists who are members of those teams. So for the Sub-County Health Management Team, we have our Sub-County MOH, the Sub-County Medical Officer of Health, who is Dr. Hasseli, and he's a public health pharmacist. And we have Dr. Wanje David, who's the sub-county pharmacist, and they are actually some of the key members of the sub-county response team. So Dr. Hassan is actually the in charge of the response team, and so he's responsible for coordinating the activities which are happening in the sub-county in response to the pandemic. So some of the things which he has been involved in include collecting of samples and contact tracing. And I know it's been a tough job. It's hard work. And yeah, then together with his team, they have also had to work in collaboration with the police and the prisons department to ensure, to enforce the COVID preventive guidelines. So next slide, please. Another of the role that he has had to participate in was in disseminating information to the public. This is on COVID-19. They've had to work with the community health workers to make sure information is getting to everyone right in the community, and also arranging for vehicles which go around with loudspeakers and just giving people information. So he's also worked with Dr. Wanje, the sub-county pharmacist, who has played and continues to play a key role in the management of the COVID logistics for the sub-county facilities. So this involves ensuring that the facilities have adequate COVID response supplies. These are like the sanitizers and personal protective equipment. Also making sure that during this pandemic, the facilities have an uninterrupted supply of the essential medicines and other program medications such as the ARVs, antimalarials. So yeah, he just had to, he had to work to ensure that this was always available at the facilities. He also needed to coordinate the pharmacovigilance within these facilities. And he has also been involved in sensitizing the public in the rural facilities and in the communities on COVID-19. So next slide, please. So one of our other responsibilities included following up on our high-risk patients, specifically the diabetes and hypertensive patients who are also living with HIV. So we had to make sure that their diabetes and hypertension was under control and that they were adhering to their medications, both for HIV and for the other comorbid conditions. And we also carried out follow-up by using phone calls to see how they were doing and to determine if they had enough stocks of their medication. We also needed to remind them of any pending tests that they had to do and the results that needed to be given in. Then we have mentioned that we are running an MTM clinic, and this serves as a linkage area because we have consolidated documentation on our patients' progress and outcomes and whatever medications they are taking, especially for those comorbid patients who get seen in different clinics. You find that sometimes the information is not consolidated. If you have a patient being seen at the diabetes clinic, and maybe they're also getting seen at the hypertensive clinic, maybe the psychiatric clinic. So when they come to MTM, we're able to consolidate all this information on them. So we are able now to provide linkage and referrals without
without the patient having to move about too much. So for instance, a patient might call, and one of our anticoagulation patients will call with a complaint, or maybe they're reporting chest pain. Then we are able to link them to the casualty department to get an ECG and X-ray, and then we move the results for them to, we communicate with the physician on the results and get her input. And so when the patient comes to the hospital, they come and spend minimal time at the hospital because we have already done the coordination for them. Then we also had to follow up the patients who normally attend our MTM clinic by making phone calls. And some of them would call us also to ask us whether they needed to come, or rather whether the clinics were open. And then when we ran out of some drugs, we called them to tell them that there was no need for them to come, that they could get those drugs from a pharmacy outside, a community pharmacy outside. So next slide, please. The other thing we are hoping to play a role in is an involvement in the WHO Solidarity clinical trial. So Kilifi County Hospital was chosen as a site for the trial. And this is a WHO-led multi-center trial where we shall be collaborating with Kemri Wellcome Trust. And in this trial, the patients who meet inclusion criteria will be randomized to either getting the local standard of care alone, or they shall get the local standard of care plus one of either remdesivir, so they'll get it as for 10 days as an infusion, or they'll get chloroquine or hydroxychloroquine, whichever is available. So this one, they get 2 doses, 2 oral loading doses, and then they take it orally twice daily for another 10 days. Or they could get lopinavir, ritonavir, which they'll take orally twice daily for 2 weeks. Or they get that lopinavir, ritonavir orally twice daily for 2 weeks, plus interferon injection for 6 days. So the pharmacist will play a role in the trial by ensuring that okay, these drugs will be provided. It's not the hospital to procure, but the drugs will be provided, and so the pharmacist will have to be to take care of the drugs, to account for these drugs, ensure proper storage and proper usage, and also to report on any adverse drug reactions, because one of the things that need to be reported during the trial is within 24 hours of a reaction occurring, this will need to be reported. However, so I'm sorry, in my slides it reads that HCQ has been dropped out. Initially, there has been a lot of ongoing debate about hydroxychloroquine use, and at some point it had been said that it will be dropped out, but other more recent information says that whatever data there was showing that this drug is not safe for use is being reconsidered. Yeah, there's a debate on it. So hydroxychloroquine is still going to be there in the one of the arms. So this one we are still waiting, because we are waiting for approval for our site to be included. But as soon as it's included, we shall be starting. Next slide, please. So this is just our MTM team. When the pandemic started, we changed from just doing MTM to being hand sanitizer manufacturers, and so we temporarily converted our MTM clinic to also this was a place where we had enough space. So this is us making a batch of hand sanitizer. Next slide. Yes, and that's the MTM team. MTM team stroke sanitizer making team. We have Dr. Elizabeth on the, that is me, on the extreme left, then Dr. Hinjal Bhatia, followed by Dr. Bennett Karani, and then Dr. Nigel Madara. Next slide, please. So this is our, to the left is our hospital pharmacist in charge, Dr. Terry, and on the right is Dr. Cecilia. She's our county pharmacist. I believe here they were making a drug order and PPEs. They were working on PPEs for the pandemic. Next slide. Yeah, so this is just our MTM clinic and sanitizer making facility. Next slide. So Kilifi County Hospital pharmacist is working together with other healthcare professionals in this fight against COVID, and we're doing all we can to make sure we support each other and we support our patients. Next slide. Yeah, so this is it's a good time for pharmacists to stand tall and provide more help to the communities. And it's not just to serve our patients, but also to demonstrate what we are capable of. This is the right time. And we need to unite to assure that we are the best that we can be. So yeah, who knows, it might be at this time that we show our true potential. And yeah, we are trying to show that pharmacies can come together to get the job done. So thank you so much. Next slide. And since the borders have been closed and people cannot travel to the coast, we decided to just share a few pictures with you so that for those who missed coming during the April holidays. Thank you so much. That's the end of our presentation, and we shall be happy to answer any questions. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you, Dr. Gadua, for that inspiring presentation, and for the team also. I will go straight to questions. I realize that people are also sharing their questions in the chat rather than the Q&A tab, but that's fine. I've been able to pick up. First question is from Dr. Daniela. What patients will get these trial drugs? All COVID-19 patients or severe cases? Anyone can answer?
Some of the information that will be collected when patients are being enrolled is the severity of their disease. So it will be all confirmed COVID positive patients, and we shall have the information on how severe their disease was at the enrollment. Yeah, to be able to stratify patients. Thank you.
Okay. The other question is from Andrew Maranga. Are there any partnerships or participation of private sector pharmacists in this response? Are you people partnering with private sector pharmacists?
Hello?
No, we are not. We're not partnering with any private sector pharmacists for this, except Kemri Pharmacy. Thank you.
Okay. Another question, sort of comment again from Dr. Sylvia Opanga. I think she wants to ask, how would you advocate for more roles of pharmacists in the Solidarity trial?
Sorry, please repeat the question.
How would you advocate for more roles of pharmacists in the Solidarity trial? You talked about a trial that is proposed, and I think we just want to find out how would you advocate, how would you instigate, how would you ensure that pharmacists are also involved? Are you in touch with these people? Are these people in touch with you? Or how is this going?
We're Kilifi County Hospital is a site for the trial, and so whatever patients we shall have will still undergo their normal standard of care, which usually involves whatever work we do as pharmacists for these patients. So we monitor their medication, how they are taking it, that their outcomes, and any adverse reactions that might appear. And then, yeah, so we give in our input as in clinic. Maybe my colleague Karani also wants to add something.
Yes, thank you. Then we could also, as part of the trial, we could monitor the interactions these drugs have with the normal causes of drugs that they are taking for their normal day-to-day ailments. So we could provide maybe some way of monitoring the drug interactions, and also since the medicines, most of them from our experience with the Cambridge pharmacies, that they are sole custodians of the medicines, the importing, the requesting, and all those documentation that pertain to the trial. So that's the role of it. When you hands-on, you can be able to appreciate it, because when the drugs are here with the storage conditions, the appropriate segregation of trial drugs and the normal drugs for the normal ailments, maybe to answer that, that's how we could emphasize our role. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. I have a question. How are you encouraging people in Kilifi to come to hospital, especially now that there's a fear of being infected in some of these health facilities? You have seen in the media some of these places, including one Shalom Hospital that was even just shut down, or was it sealed off? I think the right term is sealed off because of several number of patients who are confirmed there. So what are you doing? Because people have a fear of going to some of these places because they believe they could actually pick some of these things there.
Yes, thank you for that question. So for now, there were guidelines that were released, interim guidelines that said the opening of all NCD clinics, especially to the elderly. So I think for us, the pharmacists and all the people attending to the clinics, we have to work our way around it, ensure there's screening. Now that they've removed those spraying booths, illegal now to put up spraying booths and spray people all over the place as they walk through. So we have screening areas coming in, thermograms, you record the temperatures, and then as they come in, there's a physical distancing. As we go, try to minimize the number of patients coming in. So from the gate, we a wave of 10 people each coming in, and this partial distribution in the waiting areas for the medical outpatient and MTM clinics. So the people come in waves, and then there's sanitizing points, and then we also they have to have masks when they're coming in, and then now the high-risk patients seen, and then the refills that's seen. So it's kind of working within the guidelines that all clinics need to be open, because we notice that people are dying at home, and as much as you don't want to come to the hospital, contact the virus, then you stay at home and then decay, then you pass on, or you get complications of the normal comorbid illnesses. So we try to work a way of, try to make it a win-win in the infection prevention, as the same way, screening, thermal screening, recording of the temperatures, and social distance sanitizing, and the levels of protective, personal protective equipment depending on your level of exposure. So we have risk assessments in the clinic. So you assess the risk of exposure of your healthcare workers working in that clinic, and then you can be able to assess the risk. The high risk, then you additional PPEs. If it's low risk, and then you don't appropriately. So that's how we are trying to do it. We have the challenges, but we are trying to make it work with the resources that we have. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Maybe just one last question from me again. You talked about running the MTM clinic, and maybe you could just share with us who comes to the MTM clinics, or maybe what kind of clients come to the MTM clinics?
Hello, thank you for your question. So the MTM clinic, for now, we have all chronic illnesses coming. We started off with the anticoagulation, patients on anticoagulation medications coming, the ones, the diabetic and antihypertensive patients coming. We're slowly moving on to sickle cell patients and patients on who are taking antipsychotics and antihypertensives. Thank you.
All right, thank you for that. I want to recognize the presence of Professor Francis Ndemo, who is a fellow of the Pharmaceutical Society of Kenya. And he is also the chair of the PSK COVID-19 response team. Professor Francis Ndemo, can you say something to our participants?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, I'm sorry, I've been so tied up. Actually, my question is directed to Dr. Gadua, because we made a deal with her. I was just wondering, in the MTM clinic, are you following any laid down protocols on how to document your drug therapy problems? Is she there? Liz, where are you?
Yes, yeah. Thanks, Professor.
No, you passed all the exams. I don't mean, just want to know. No, I'm really curious. I'm very impressed, and I'm quite encouraged that you have an MTM clinic. That's pretty neat. But I think soon we should have an alliance of all those running MTM clinics, because personally, I'm interested in establishing the pharmacist patient care process. I mean, in your documentation, there should be a clear 5 steps. That is collection, assessment, coming to care plan, implementation. Number 5, monitoring and follow-up evaluation. So anyway, all I'm saying is that are you able to identify drug therapy problems just as you learned during your postgraduate, or you're doing your own way in Kilifi?
Thank you, Professor, for the question. So we're actually following the pharmacotherapy workup notes, which were developed by Linda Strand and her colleagues.
Yes.
And we've kind of modified it to suit us, but we have that process which we follow and document for every patient that we see. And we assess the patient, and then we identify the drug therapy problems and come up with we resolve them and come up with a care plan. We also issue the patients with a medication record on where we consolidate all the medications they are taking.
Okay, that's good. That's what I will soon join hands, and hopefully in the near future we'll have a software to help you out, because eventually after a while, maybe after a year, you would actually now collect all those DTPs, drug therapy problems, and do like a mini study. What we're trying to do from at the national level, we're trying to come up with a pharmaceutical care of COVID patients. But I was more interested in a process where we truly identify drug therapy problems and essentially applying all the pharmaceutical care principles that we ever learned during school. Well, thanks so much. I'm very impressed. This is a good beginning. So you actually monitor, you do INRs for patients on warfarin?
We send them out at the hospitals. Currently, we're not doing INR, but we're able to send them to an outside lab where they do that. Plus, we're also having rivaroxaban, which the generic one, so we are able to give our patients that.
Yeah, for the INR is that's somewhere we can join hands together with MTRH, Moi Referral and Teaching Hospital. It's not very expensive to buy the INR machine. It's about $400, I think. We do have a clinic. I do have a clinic here in Nairobi. We do INR tests actually. It's best if you can just purchase one. If you Google it, it's fairly cheap. Or even get it as a donation, especially for those companies that supply the warfarin. So in that way, you can, now we have Zoom, we can actually undergo some form of training, and we have protocols for monitoring. So you don't have to necessarily send them out. At the point of care, it's very important. You don't have to go and wait forever. You can do it in a few minutes and you're done, just like blood glucose. So, but that is very encouraging. So imagine I'm going to have a special lunch because of that. It's good.
So, thank you, Prof. We're looking forward to collaborating.
Yeah, sure. No, we will. I'm really impressed. Yeah, thanks.
Okay. Another question here from Francis Kimani. As part of hospital and sub-county RRT, have you conducted assessment for preparedness for COVID-19? How was your experience?
Hi.
Anyone
Regarding
can
that
answer?
question, yes, regarding that question about experiences of sub-county pharmacists on their experience out there on the field, I don't think any of us are best placed to answer that. Maybe we can pass that question on to the sub-county pharmacist and leave a response on the PSK group, if that's helpful. Thank you.
Sorry, if I can add on that, the only way they've showed us the preparedness is in the form of an organogram. They've postulated an organogram that shows the level of the hierarchy of reporting. So there's an incident commander for the county reporting to community. There's a whole organogram. Basically, that's how they presented it to us when they were talking to us about the Kilifi County COVID preparedness. So it's just chain of command of who to report, who to contact in case of commodities, in case of IT, and in case of any media issues. So maybe we can gather more information from the ones directly involved in it, then we can share it. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Dr. Karani. Somebody is asking, Neto Obala. So this is a good approach with the hand sanitizer. Where are you doing the measurements for sanitizer concentrations?
Hi, thank you for the question, Dr. Neto Obala. So we were making the hand sanitizer in our MTM clinic, and we got the measurements using the WHO formulation, and we had the appropriate equipment in terms of the measuring cylinders to measure out the different volumes. And we also have an alcoholometer that can be used to measure the percentage of concentration of alcohol in each of these sanitizers. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that answer. I think most facilities and institutions have adopted that. And given the fact that most of us have been trained in extemporaneous preparations, so with, I think, with a team that is quite careful in coming up with some of this, and with the knowledge and awareness that this is going to be used by other humans, I'm sure your team is also making sure that all the ingredients are in the right concentration and in the right form. What I also wanted just to add on to that in terms of a question, are you putting an expiry, or are you advising people on how long they can use these sanitizers, or is it just, I don't know, are you preparing small quantities? How are you managing that?
So each of our sanitizers are packaged in a 500 ml bottle, and they have an expiry date of 1 month, which we do indicate on our label, date of production and the date of expiry, so they can have that information with them. Thank you.
Okay, Somebody else is asking here, Francis Kimani again. For those taking hydroxychloroquine, I don't know whether you have patients there on hydroxychloroquine. Are there pre-medication tests? Yeah, just to rule out cardiac risks that are carried out on these patients.
So for all the patients, we shall have to have some baseline tests that we have to be done. We do the ECGs and all that. But currently, we don't have any patients on any of these medications. We are lucky that most of our patients have been mild, and the most they are taking is paracetamol. But if and when the trial commences, yeah, we shall have to do all those tests.
Okay. So there's a question here from Dr. Solomon Karanja. Where are you sourcing IPA? KEMSA? I believe IPA stands for isopropyl alcohol.
Yes, so regarding IPA, we actually purchased it from a company called Pharmachem in Nairobi. Thank you.
All right. Dr. Yvonne Kamau has a follow-up question. Does the MTM clinic liaise with the hospital physicians? Because you might have a situation where patients get different therapy from two teams.
Yes, our MTM clinic does liaise with the physician of the hospital physician, Dr. Nadia, and we're working well together with support from her. Thank you.
Okay. There are a few other technical questions here, but I think, I don't know whether are you using dexamethasone? Is dexamethasone part of the therapy that you're using in your facility?
No, we're not using dexamethasone.
You're not using, so maybe that question might not be relevant then. Richard Gakunju is concerned about the safety of chemicals in the sanitation tunnels. How are you ensuring the efficacy?
Thank you for the question. We are also concerned about the safety of the chemical tunnels. That's why with the new guidelines, it's a relief that we are actually putting down those. We're no longer setting up the sanitation tunnels, and the ones that are there are being put down. So it's not recommended to spray people with chemicals. It has adverse effect to the eyes and to the mask, because we spray that, then it stays on the mask the whole time the patient is walking around with the mask. So we don't have any sanitation tunnels put up, and no more being put up in the county as we speak. Thank you.
Okay, so this is to say again that so everybody's using the hand sanitizer. I think that was the first question I wanted to ask, which I did ask. How are the numbers of patients coming into the facility? And maybe that is tagged to then how much sanitizer are you producing per unit time?
So regarding the sanitizer making, we're making about 50 liters a week. In the beginning, the demand was quite high and we're producing 100 liters a week, but the demand has slowly gone down because of availability of other sanitizers. So we're making at the moment, we're making about 50 liters in 1 week. And regarding the number of patients, it's not as how it was. It's still trickling in slowly. And at the gates, we do have measures whereby a large crowd is not allowed to enter at one time. There is a time period of how many patients can enter through the gate at any given point of time. Thank you.
Yeah, so that's I think that's quite important that you're controlling the numbers that are coming in. And how are you controlling the crowds that are waiting outside? I'm just wondering, because if people are not going to be streaming in as usual, then people are going to be sort of gathering outside. Are you also doing something to the people out there to maintain social distancing, or?
So outside the security gates, there are people, but they have to maintain social distancing. Most of them, I mean, all of them do wear masks, and that information has been disseminated to the security guards, which do ensure there is social distancing being maintained between the patients or the people waiting outside at the hospital gate. Thank you.
Okay. Well, I think at this point, we've exhausted most of the questions that have been asked. I think we have a bit of more time. I don't know whether, Prof, you want to say something before I...
Sorry, Mike.
Yes.
Dr. Opanga.
Yes.
There's a question from Professor Jennifer Orwa that has not been answered. So I'll just go ahead and fill the question.
Yes.
And Professor Jennifer Orwa asks, COVID-19, like other viruses, pharmaceutical cure is not yet available. What mechanism clears the SARS-CoV-2 virus for the infected who become virus negative? I think anyone from the panel can join and respond.
You know, it turned out to be successful.
Okay. Yes, Professor Nemo, you're saying something. You're muted now. Professor Nemo?
Mike, I think he was taking a personal call, but I see also another question from Dr. Vijay Maini.
Okay, can one of the speakers maybe respond to this? I know it's a very open question, and there is quite a lot that is unknown about COVID-19, but you might have something to say about it.
Regarding that question, I think we would need to read more on this because I don't think any of us want to give a vague answer. So maybe we can read more on it and give a reply on the PSK group if that's okay. Thank you.
All right. Yeah, I think we'll let that go for now. I think there's quite a lot of unknowns and a lot of speculation. People are talking about immunity, herd immunity, and that being one of the channels, but again, there are no definites there yet. And I think with time, we'll be able to get more definite answers regarding how people move from positive to negative status. You said there was also a question from Vijay Maini. Yes, if ever the pharmacy has to be fumigated, which disinfectant would you use?
Thank you for that question. We're using chlorine solution, 0.5% chlorine solution for fumigation, and this is the standard solution recommended for disinfection of surfaces and areas, which is different, of course, from the linen that is 0.05% of chlorine solution. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And again, with disinfectant use, again, there's also quite a lot of questions around that, especially when it comes to fumigation and particularly for pharmacies, because if it's fumigation, it means that disinfectant takes an aerosol type of effect, meaning some of the content of the disinfectant can actually diffuse and get into packets or get into medications. So putting again other questions, are drugs themselves safe if rooms or pharmacies are fumigated with disinfectants containing chlorine? So this is again something that there are probably no particular answers now. I think a lot of people are taking a very precautionary approach to COVID-19. So there's another question here again. From Dr. Elizabeth, on the issue of viral load and shedding. How long does one carry the virus for, and can they still infect others even though tested negative? So again, this is open to even some of the other persons in the panel. If you have anything to share about how long people carry this virus, and can they still infect others even though they've tested negative?
Regarding that question, there have been some instances whereby some of the patients who have been tested false negative, and some who have been and have still passed on the infection on to others. But all of this information is still new and it's still coming in. Like the information that we're getting from China, the ones who were positive and they were treated and they had negative, and they were retested to be positive again. So I don't think there's any confirmation of anything right now. All of that we're seeing or reading is all information that's popping up in different countries. So there's no fixed answer to that question. I hope that helps. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I think I agree with you in the sense that, I mean, there's no indicator to say that you're infected right now. You could actually be infected and a test is done and you come out negative, just because the population of viruses that is in your respiratory tract is not enough to really trigger that test. Dr. Solomon Karanja is asking again, how much of what you are doing is being replicated in neighboring counties? I think he's basically asking, are you collaborating with other counties or other areas or sub-counties to ensure that, your efforts are synergized?
Thank you for that. We collaborate mainly with the Coast General Referral Hospital in as much as there's some communities, there's some drugs that they have that we don't have. So in those areas that we help maybe facilitating of acquisition of the medicines from there with the lockdown. So the patients can't be able to send someone or bring them in. So we have a way of coordinating so that the vial or the ampule reaches the patient who is at an inpatient. This is part of the roles as inpatient pharmacists. So we do the coordination, and those are the areas in which we liaise with the nearby counties, specifically Mombasa and the Coast General Provincial Hospital to be specific. Thank you.
Yeah, and we have a last question here from Nixon Motari, who is asking, how have the patient responded to the MTM clinic? Have they been referring other patients for MTM services and medication reconciliation?
So thank you for that question. So the patients are very happy with the MTM clinic. They actually do bring their friends or maybe their relatives to the clinic, and they proudly tell these people that these are the doctors that have helped me, and I'm feeling better. So the patient's response is it's very positive. They're very pleased with the services offered. Thank you.
Okay, I think we've addressed most of the questions here, and also in the chat area. Dr. Sylvia, is there any question I've not tackled?
It's just somebody who was asking how MTM clinics run. I think Liz can give a brief on that.
Yeah, maybe
And
just
then
a
maybe if
brief.
Professor Ndemo has something to say, he can add.
Okay. So Dr. Gadua, maybe, or Dr. Hinjel, you could probably just describe briefly how does the MTM clinic work in your facility?
So for the how we started with this with the MTM, we started with the anticoagulation clinic, and that we started with referrals from the physician should send patients over to us, and then we moved on to, and they would pass after coming from the diabetes clinic for their routine outpatient clinics. Then they would get sent to the MTM clinic. So, sorry, I'm not sure if I'm answering the question.
Just to add on that, we also recruit from inpatient because we have 3 inpatient pharmacists. So we have outpatient patients coming in from the outpatient. These are the clinics you talked about: diabetes outpatient clinic, comprehensive care clinics, and sickle cell clinic. And then we have the different wards and the ward pharmacists, inpatient pharmacists in the wards that we have now, the inpatient register and an outpatient register. These are the points of entry for these patients. So we log them in for ward 2, ward 3. The inpatient pharmacists come with the details for the patients that will be referred to the clinic for follow-up from discharge. So the process starts when the patient is inpatient. So we talk to them that there's a clinic that you need to be coming. This is what the clinic does, and this is your TCA. So as we are processing the discharge, so we record them in the inpatient register as we continue following. So the MTM stretches its arms to the inpatient, linking them to the MTM, so that on discharge, they come to the clinic. So this is enables the inpatient pharmacists. They get the details, log them in the inpatient register, and then we follow them up to outpatient through the clinic. So it's actually the focal point where we get patients coming in from all the departments, even if the patient is readmitted. So we pull out the file, the records from our MTM that we have consolidated information for the patient when the patient was admitted a while back, throughout monitoring and management in the clinic and readmission, so that continuation of therapy continues, so that we don't have to start again titrating insulin doses. We have the previous dose, start from there and then tweak it to control the sugar. So it's that has to make a presentation on it on the broader perspective of it, but the collaboration of the inpatient and the clinics, because these are the areas where the patient trickle in from. So I hope I've tried to answer that. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Karani. Maybe Dr. Gaduak, you could also give us a little bit of details for, because the forum also contains young pharmacists, people who have been probably registered recently. There are also pharmaceutical technologies working in hospitals and so on. And there are people who probably are interacting with the word MTM for the first time in this webinar. So maybe you could just give us a little brief, maybe 1-2 minutes. What exactly do you do when you get the patient, you and the patient? What sort of interactions do you have? Very briefly.
Thank you for that. So when we are doing MTM, basically we're trying to address, in general, we're trying to address four drug-related needs of the patient. So we are looking at is the medication appropriate for that indication? And is the medication effective for that condition in that patient? Is it safe for that patient? And is a patient able to take this medication? So adherence or compliance, whichever word you might want to use. So for us to be able to assess on whether these drug-related needs are being met, then we go through an assessment of the patient. We just get details from the patient on their condition and what medication they are on, and their experience with taking this medication, how compliant they are. Then we also we collect information on immunization, past drug history, and any medication that they are currently taking, be it herbal or over the counter, or just we ask them to show us all the medication that they're taking. Then we also do a review of systems just to be able to know if there's any, it's good to get a baseline so that also when they come the next time, we'll know whether they are having any reaction to any drug. And also if there is an indication that is not addressed, which could be addressed by a medication. So when we do the assessment, we're able to identify any drug therapy problems that they may be having. So this is a whole other topic, but we have in general 7 drug therapy problems which we look at. And each drug therapy problem has its cause. So when we identify the drug therapy problem and its cause, for instance, if one of the drug therapy problems is that the patient needs an additional drug therapy, the cause could either be they have an untreated condition, or they require some preventive or prophylactic medication, or some synergistic or potentiating medication. So that guides us on the next step of action, because if it is that they require some preventive or prophylactic medication, then we recommend that it be added. Then we write down a care plan for each condition. So this includes what the goal of therapy is when in how to manage this particular condition, and what medication they'll take to achieve that goal. And then we have a schedule for evaluation. So we schedule the patient when to come next, and we know what we are going to check. So for instance, it's a hypertensive patient, so we have the baseline BPs, and we recommend they be on a certain drug, and that we should check on their BPs again after 1 month, and hoping to achieve a certain goal. Then we also give the patient a medication record, so that wherever they go, even if they see a different physician or whoever they see, they are able to produce that record which has consolidated all that they are taking. I hope I...
Thank you, Dr. Gaduo, for that. I think MTM is a very comprehensive exercise, and it really brings out quite a lot in pharmacy practice, yeah, especially clinical pharmacy practice. So for those who are really interested in that, I think it's something that is kind of the direction where we're going towards, even as a profession. Eh? Nixon Motari is asking again, since you have an oncology department, are you trying to promote and push for radiopharmacy services at your facility?
Thank you for the question. So we have a radio pharmacist. We are yet to, the logistics of the clinics are yet to be done, because we were promised that we're going to have it up, and then all of a sudden it was a COVID medical complex. So right now we're just outsourcing services. We not yet established the services for oncology and radio pharmacy as such. So we go practice elsewhere, and then hoping to sort out the issues with the complex that has come up. So for now, no, nothing much we're doing. Dr. Wante is our radio pharmacist, for those who know him. So we're working closely to see how much, because we went in as a batch for oncology training, Dr. Nigel. So we're working on a way to make sure we get the services. For now, it's just palliative setting. So we are hoping to have something working maybe the turn of the year. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Hinjal Bhatia, Dr. Elizabeth Gadua, and Dr. Bennett Karani, we want to appreciate the time you've taken to come and share with us in this webinar. We really appreciate the work that you're doing out there in Kilifi County Hospital. We know that there is quite a lot of work that is going on with pharmacies during this COVID-19 pandemic. I also want to appreciate everybody who has contributed towards the making of this webinar, Dr. Peter Odhiambo, who has been, again, seamless with the slides. I also want to appreciate Dr. Daniela Mnene, the CEO, as well as Dr. Silvio Panga, my co-moderator, and Professor Ndemo for taking time to come and be with us. Just to remind you again that the Pharmaceutical Society of Kenya came up with a task force, PSK COVID-19 task force, and our aim is just to address some of the issues that pharmacists are facing during COVID-19, as well as share the experiences. And we are calling on your support in some of the activities that are ongoing. You can contact Dr. Eric, who is the operations manager, see how best you can support this cause. At this point, I also want to say thank you on my behalf and pass on the microphone to Dr. Daniela. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Mike, for that wonderful moderation. Mike and Sylvia, asante. Thank you, Prof, for the insights that you've brought to the discussion. And thank you very much to our distinguished panelists from Kilifi County Hospital. Certainly the way you're handling the pandemic and the way you've embedded pharmacists in the responses is very inspiring. To our participants, remember to subscribe to the event before it disappears from the PPB portal so that you can get your CPD points. Members of KPA, we always send a list of participants to your officials so that they can award you your CPD points. Otherwise, asanteni, have a good day. Let's meet on Wednesday morning.
Thank you so much, Dr. Daniela. Thank you so much, Dr. Peter. And thank you so much, Dr. Michael, Dr. Sylvia, for giving us this opportunity. We're very excited and happy, and hopefully we can have more presentations in the future. Thank you. Good day to all.
Good day.
Good day and bye, everyone.